Hello and welcome to Lone Star Silver Screen, a podcast dedicated to everything that exists at the intersection of Texas and the movies. I'm your host, Austin Zook, and today I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Shaun Michael Colón, to talk about his film, Age of Audio, a documentary exploring the rise and proliferation of podcasts in culture. And we want to focus specifically on what he's been doing since that film had its premiere, how he's been getting it out into the world, and kind of sharing it with everyone else. Shaun, how are you today?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. This is I don't know if this is keeps it evergreen, but here in Dallas we had the ice stuff going on. Depending on when this comes out, but there was. I'm sure if you're in Dallas, you'll remember the ice stuff going on. Yeah, doing pretty good, man.
Good. Well, I'm excited to have you. You don't know this, but I'm going to get it out of the way early. Your documentary is actually one of the reasons this podcast exists because I was so taken with the story you told and kind of everything going on in there that I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to put this together. So thank you. In a way, you did this to yourself.
That's amazing. If I could do that, like the movie just goes out, creates a ton of podcasts, they get real popular, and they bring me on to their popular podcasts. That'd be
I was
great.
going to say, we all have to like give you a cut or something.
That's actually encouraging because the film really, I think, deals with some of the realities of it what it does, what it means to do a podcast, and some of the challenges. And so to hear you come out of it and go, yeah, I'm going to do that. That's really encouraging.
Well, so let's start with just kind of some background on the film. I mean, how would you describe this to someone who isn't familiar with it yet? I mean, did I do a pretty good job in the intro, or is there anything else you would add?
Yeah, it's a documentary about podcasts, and also I feel like the other side of it's documentary about what it means to be a creative. That I think beyond even podcasting, it's what does it mean to be an independent creative, and what are the highs and lows of doing that. And I guess at the end of the day, is art worth making? Is making stuff worth doing for its own right? So I hope that's the message anyway.
Do you feel like having made the film, art is worth making?
Yes, yes. At the end of the day, it's definitely worth making. Sometimes at high noon or later in the evening, it can feel like, I think you never make a movie about, if you make a movie, make it about yourself in some way, even though it's not directly about me. It's definitely some of the things that are a protagonist or subject, however you describe him. Ronald Young Jr., what he goes through, I feel sometimes in my bones. So yeah. Um, yeah, it's worth making. That's why we do it. Is something worth making if whether or not it makes a ton of money? Is monetary value the only value? Now, I would love some money.
If anyone listening just wants to give you some money, you are going to take it.
I mean, yes, if you want to donate, you see the film and you want to donate, I will gladly take the money. Not necessarily as a like, oh, I want to get rich, obviously, but I make an independent film. I mean, I think there's other ways to get rich if you really want to do it. No, is there? Uh, I think the creative process has its own value, and that experience and those things cannot be how a thing plays out and how you're able to monetize on a particular piece of art. I think is its own almost its own other thing. It's like making the thing, and then the making the thing is definitely worth it, 100%.
Well,
Making the
so
making part is totally worth it.
two of the things that I really want to focus in on these episodes I'm doing right now, where I'm talking to filmmakers like yourself, is like I said in the intro, I want to talk about how you've been getting your project out into the world and sharing it with audiences. And then I also want to talk about the process of making it and kind of how you made ends meet because it's a lot of fundraising and maybe doing odd jobs just to kind of pay the bills while you worked on this. Because you worked on this film for 7 years, is that right? Give or take?
Yes. Yeah, it took I mean, the caveat there is COVID is in the middle of
Yeah,
that, so
sure.
it took a long time, and then it took an extra long time because of world events and stuff like that. No, I've been driving Uber and Lyft for the past 9 years, once I finished the other movie, and I mean, I've had some really cool opportunities present themselves sort of because of the movie or because I was around in podcasting. So for the last year, I've been working for Sony in some podcast production as an audio engineer and taking some very light video and also doing some editing and things like that, some podcast editing for a weekly show. If anyone listening is a fan of Crunchyroll,
Yeah.
I've been doing it for the Crunchyroll official podcast for about the last year. So that's just like that's a couple days out of the week. And then Every once in a while, a tape sync will come my way if anyone's in podcasting, narrative podcasting, or radio broadcasting. Tape sync is when you're interviewing someone and they send a audio engineer with a microphone to record them on the other side of the phone so they get good audio. I'm kind of doing that right now with this because I'm recording
Ooh,
myself so I get the tape sync. But yeah, but a lot of it's been, I mean, a tremendous amount was coming from just driving Uber and the flexibility of doing that. I think I've done 25,000 rides at this point, something like that.
wow. Shaun, I would give anything in my life to have you be my Uber driver. I think that would be the best Uber ride. Can I ask you a question that I actually do ask all of my Uber drivers?
For sure.
Have you ever had anyone throw up in the car?
Sort of. Out of 25,000 rides, I had it's like a technical yes. It was about 8 o'clock in the evening. This was, I guess, the three sisters, and they were carrying at 8 o'clock. You kind of expect that later at night, that kind of thing. Eight
Yeah.
o'clock, and they're carrying the sister, kind of like having to hold her up basically. She's kind of stumbling. And I was already kind of nervous about it and took the ride. And about halfway there, I hear, "Whoop," but it was like not a full thing, if that makes sense. Like a little bit got on the floor mat, but there's like take the floor mat out situation,
Yeah.
handled. At that point, I instituted if you can't stand up, you can't get in the car rule.
I think that's a good rule.
And that served me pretty well. I mean, I've definitely driven off a few times when I have gotten there and seen what the situation is and been like, nope. For the longest time, I was driving to just like take advantage of like the higher end rides. I had like a nice Lexus with a red interior, so I was like, Nope, not happening, not happening."
Yeah, you can't do any of those like Uber Black rides if you if you've got vomit smell
Yeah.
in the
So
car.
so, but that was like early in the beginning. I was thinking the first couple years that happened, and I have been able to. I don't drive much at night anyway, so
Yeah.
it reduces the amount of times that I would be exposed to that, if you will. But yeah, so like Uber and Lyft have been, significant.
So going back to Age of Audio, where did this project start for you? How did you embark on this journey originally?
Yeah, basically, I was working on another project. I had the situation where I, through this other project, ended up at a punk rock show with Ira Glass, and I actually hung out with him, and we got to chatting, and to the point where it wasn't just a quick encounter; it was like a elongated encounter. And shortly after that, I was interviewing this podcaster named Dallas Taylor. He has this show called 20,000 Hertz. If anyone hasn't heard it, you should go check it out. It's all about sound, beautiful narrative storytelling. He's doing some stuff right now on YouTube where he's with the SNL audio people, K-pop Demon Hunters final mix, like in the studio kind of stuff. So go check that out. Dallas Taylor. But he had done this episode about a thing called the Wilhelm Scream. And so I was interviewing him. And afterwards, he knew that I had met Roman Mars through my first movie or had some interactions with him. And then when I told him the story of running into Ira Glass, he was like, dude, you know Ira Glass and you know Roman Mars. Why aren't you making a podcast documentary? And I was like, damn it, I have to do that. Or at least have to try and do that. And then, yeah, so I think from the time that was said, I think then there was I went to South by Southwest, got some, talked to ended up running to my sales agent. He said he could probably get money for that idea. The next day was like a podcaster, big podcaster meetup from the PRX. And I ran into like the heads of like Stitcher and Radiotopia and basically pitched all them. And they were all like, yeah, here's my number. Here's some email. And then it just kind of was off and running. It just kind of started. It felt like it was going to happen really fast.
It always feels that way when you start.
In the beginning, all of these things just kept falling in line. It was like, oh, great. I mean, I have some other stories of some sort of completely kismet things where um, it's like, I don't know if you're, in your writing or any other of your creative projects, it's like sometimes it just like, it feels like it wants to happen. Times when you're fighting against trying to the stream, and sometimes the flow is going with the way the project is. Like it's people are saying yes, dates are lining up, all these kind of things. Like all the things keep falling into a row, and it feels like, oh, this thing wants to be made, and that really is, I think, important for the beginning of a project, because I think almost any major project's going to run into a time where it's not flowing like that. I would say almost any creative or any business endeavor, any kind of endeavor you go into, I feel like there's gonna if you don't have that initial momentum, it can feel harder to get through. I would say that um, in 2019, we did like 30, 35 interviews, and we were going into 2020 setting things up, and we just had like a momentum going. And it was like Ira Glass, Kevin Smith, boom, boom, like all these, and all these other important interviews. It was like we were able to line them up, and it just felt like we were really going somewhere. And then pandemic hit, we couldn't interview anybody anymore, you know. And that's not the only thing in the documentary. I mean, it also gave me time to start piecing together some of the parts of the film. If the movie would have ended several years ago, we would have missed a big chunk of the story. And I think it would have made it even more challenging to give it a place where it could be evergreen, because it kind of runs up and down a cycle. We might have ended it at the up part and not the, you know, I don't want to spoil anything from the movie, but if you are in podcasting, or you listen to podcasts, or you read anything about podcasting, certain types of podcasts have gone from being the top most invested in thing to the thing that is really just very challenging to make at a scale. You know, I think there's individuals that are do it. They've learned how to parse things down and make money with it. But the massive millions of dollars investment into podcasting, I think it's a certain kind of podcast is over.
Well, and I think that's one of the really cool things about the film is that you are able to kind of track that moment where you have all these companies that are like, we are going to write blank checks for podcasts. This is a bottomless well of opportunity for us. And then because you stuck with it for so long over a period of time, you were able to see that kind of reach its natural ebb. And now we're in this weird place where there's still money in podcasting if you're, Amy Poehler, I guess, but it's a little harder for the people on the fringes to make a living from it, even though they're doing incredible work, which is where Ronald Young Jr. comes in and the great work he's doing. Before we get into your release strategy, I want to ask you if you would mind sharing the story of how you got Kevin Smith to take part in the documentary, because I absolutely love it.
um, so right when we got started, we were going to part of what we were doing is going to be going out to LA, and this is the first year. This is 2018. And we were just shooting B-roll. We weren't setting up interviews. We are just doing B-roll and just trying to put the flag in the ground and start building connections and start working on it. So we went out to LA to film, and I had been really through my research and a bunch of other things as I was producing the film. I'd really fallen for Kevin Smith's Fat Man Beyond. I mean, or Fat Man on Batman at the time, and I really became a fan of the show. And so, if you haven't listened to it, their format is that they kind of chat, talk about Kevin stuff. They talk about some comic book movies or things like that. And then at the end, they have a Q&A. And at the Q&A, people throughout the show brought up, because they do this usually live at the Scum and Villainy Cantina in Los Angeles. And people would bring things up to them on the counter to have Kevin sign. Could you sign stuff? And many times he would talk about what they're bringing up, especially in the Q&A and things like that. I saw that he had his show going on, and I wanted to go to the show as a fan, but I was also like, hey, maybe I can pitch on this movie. I had done a lot of research and kind of found out he was one of the earlier podcasts. I mean, he's right there, right in the beginning, and built up one of the first networks and had really some of the very first advertising that happened in podcasting was, I don't know if he can claim to the very first, but he was definitely one where they started sponsoring like company. Didn't really exist like it does now. And so I thought that was an interesting story, especially because some of the vulgar nature of one of the first advertisers, which was, I don't know if what's the
You could
rating on
say
your
it.
show? Okay. So it's Fleshlight. Spoiler. It's a Fleshlight. I spoiled a moment in the movie now because I
Well,
can
I
kind
mean,
of
it's
build up to it.
fantastic. It's still worth watching.
So, yeah. So I thought he might think that's funny. Plus, it'd be this NPR. Ira Glass was in the movie, and a bunch of this like really, thoughtful, highly produced kind of, programming. I thought had an interesting juxtaposition against the advertisers being like, this flashlight. We go to the Scum and Villainy Cantina. Sitting there, it's really great. I'm really excited. It's pretty packed. What I did is my first movie, A Fat Wreck, which is about this punk rock record label. I brought a copy for him, like a Blu-ray, and then I put a note on it that's like, "Hey, can I talk to you after the show?" or something of that nature. I can't remember exactly. It's a big one. And I put it when the show was happening. I went and put it up there. And as the show was going on, I saw him clock it a few times and look at it. So I'm like, all right, maybe he'll talk about the Fat Wreck documentary too, and then like, promote the movie, and also hopefully get to talk to him. Maybe he'll
Twofer.
ask questions about that. Like I was had in my head how it was going to play out. And we get to the Q&A portion, and they're like, "Hey, so we're gonna do something a little different today than our normal Q&A." And like, what? They say, "What we're gonna do is we're gonna bring out a guest instead, and we're gonna ask them questions." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And they're like, "Our guests are Marcus and McFeely, the writers of Infinity War and Endgame."
You got
Like,
upstaged by the Endgame guys.
I don't know if you've ever if you're a Futurama fan, but there's that when they have the Amazonian woman in love, when they're
Yeah.
like death by snoozu, their faces, they're like they keep changing. They're like they're happy and like and I'm like, damn it, yes, damn it, yes, this is awesome. I was a huge fan of these guys. So that was interesting. So they do that. It was really great. I'm in this weird place where I'm really so stoked that those guys are there. And then I'm also like, damn it, I think we missed our opportunity. He's definitely not going to talk about it now. And I'm like, well, maybe he'll go grab the Blu-ray. Because at this point, all the other people who had stuff signed, it's all gone. They'd all come and picked it up. And the Blu-ray just sitting there where they had been sitting because they came out from behind where they were before. So they're like, they wrap it up. They're like, okay, like, thanks for coming out. And they go and he goes because like they sit behind the bar. They go and instead of going back toward the Blu-ray, they go out to the back and leave. And I'm like, no, damn it. And if you've listened to the show, you know that afterward to talk about it, sometimes they go and hang out behind the bar for a few minutes afterwards, usually. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go back there. I'm gonna try, and I think I have a pretty good pitch. If I can talk to him, I think he would, he probably would do it. And so I go back there, and as I'm walking up, I see Kevin, I see Mark, and I see JC and a few other people, and I come walking up, and I saunter up. I don't run up. I kind of very slowly, and I just kind of walk up into the circle. But as I'm walking up, JC, he's like, "Hey, man, this is private." It's like, okay, that's cool. Okay. So I go around and I go around the corner to the building and I see my cinematographer who's with me, Joel. He is talking to Marcus and McFeely, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And then, but in his hand, he's got the Blu-ray. He's like, sees me. He's like, dude, he forgot the Blu-ray. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try again.
Yeah.
No, he saw it. So I
Right.
grab it and I go back and I turn the corner to the alley. Everyone's cleared out. There's like there's this car backing up and no one's there anymore. And I'm like, fuck. I, I lower my shoulders in defeat, and I'm like, missed it, And
Yeah.
in the moment, I'm thinking, I tried the best I could. We tried multiple times, and then as I'm kind of processing that it's not going to happen, I hear a window roll down from the car that was backing out, and I hear a voice, and it's a very familiar voice, and Kevin says, "Going, hey man, is that Blu-ray for me?"
That's amazing.
He's like, "I meant to grab that. I meant to grab it." Like, and so, I give him the Blu-ray, tell him about the movie, but then I'm like, "Hey, so, that's my first movie. I'm working on a second movie. This is, about podcasting. I know you were one of the first. I know about the story about the Fleshlight, and I was hoping you might be interested in doing an interview and talking about that. I think it's one of the first advertising stories. Ira Glass is in it, Rowan Mars, all these, start throwing out the names of that people that were in it already or had agreed to it. And he's like, sure, man. Yeah, cool. Sounds good. Then contact Jordan,
And it
who is
worked.
eventually took about a year.
Okay. But you got him on. He is in the movie. We can spoil that.
Oh yeah, he definitely moved me. We're doing a screening at the Smodcastle Cinemas on the 25th of February. So on the 25th of February, if anyone who listens, if you happen to be in New Jersey, New York area, we're going to do a screening at Smodcastle, and I think that kind of leads us into getting the movie out.
No, no, that's perfect. That's beautiful. That's so actually my next question was going to be when and where did you have the film's premiere?
So I would say this, my first film, like we did so many film festivals and it was a different time, it's 10 years ago. And there was just a different kind of connections with those festivals and things like that. And this film I thought would be in a lot of festivals, but we didn't get into nearly as many as I thought. So we're very honored to have our world premiere at Oak Cliff Film Festival. Couldn't ask for a better festival to be at. The people who cared about us the most, gave us a great time slot, gave us the big theater, really supported and talked about the film, talked about all the films, but we felt supported by them. They even connected us with some PR, and also being the hometown, we had people like yourself, who's a writer, talk about the film. D Magazine, BFAA did a little piece, and we were able to get a nice little boost coming out. Now, like I said, hoping to be in more film festivals after that. But our plan all along was to not just do film festivals. We were also doing conferences, podcast conferences specifically. And we did a podcast movement in August. That was right after the screening, which was kind of late June, early July timeframe. We I've done a couple podcasts. I really have been in this place where we want to promote the film, but we don't want to do too much until we have a place where people can go buy it or watch it. So the idea is to be promoting these screenings and trying to get in front of people and hopefully get a buzz going. We then did end of October. We were at a podcast conference called Resonate. We were at Speak Fest, which was down in Houston. Some of these are, smaller conferences. Audience, I think, is like the most interested theoretically. In November, we did Resonate, and then we were at Rcast in Arkansas, which is they flew me out for that one. A shout out to Ty King, who ran that and is part of the podcast academy that does the ambies. He's a great dude. Then we kind of didn't do much in December because December was kind of holiday-y, and then in January we just did a big independent podcast conference called Podfest, and that was a Friday, and that Sunday we did a screening at the Austin Film Society cinemas. That one was really good. That one felt really good.
Yeah.
Especially a lot of people were not podcast people came to see that, which is great. You want the film to stand on its own, not just, be just for one group of people. We want it to hopefully um, have tons of groups of people. But they were really great. We were Austin Film Society grant recipient in 2023, which was very awesome and humbling. They did in conjunction with Sound Unseen Film Festival, which I know the guys that run it. They're up in Minnesota, and they also do some stuff down in Austin. And they do one-off screenings, and we got fully supported by them. They promoted it. Austin Film Society. I didn't find this out until we were at the screening, but they had been running trailers of the
Wow.
film, and I only know that because when we got there and we were I had some posters and some stuff to give out, and some people came up and they were like, "Oh man, I'm really excited to see your movie. I saw the trailer when I was here a couple weeks ago, and really excited to see it." I was like, "Oh, they were running the trailer," which is so helpful. I didn't even know they were doing that. And that screening I felt was a real success. And I think because I think of all that support that we got. We haven't confirmed the date, but I think we're going to screen it at Google.
Okay.
Someone from Google reached out to me about doing a screening for a department there. We're doing a screening at NYU for one of the podcast programs, and I'm going to do a Q&A there. That'll be just before that Smod Castle screening, and then we're hoping to do one down in Rhode Island. We haven't locked it in yet. We're hoping to do like a little be in New York and then Rhode Island. Yeah, that's how those are. And then I'm happy to announce we got into another film festival. It's the Lake County Film Festival up in Chicago. And that's in March. We'll be doing some screenings there. I'm working on some screenings in Los Angeles to kind of coincide with maybe if we do that Google thing, we could have a screening there. And yeah, and hopefully, I mean, this isn't like an official announcement, but we're hoping to have it up for people to rent, buy, and stream by spring. We don't have an exact date yet, but that's what we're working toward. Still a lot of things behind the scenes that have to happen. But that's where we're headed.
So I wanted to ask, when we're talking about you getting into all these different festivals, like the podcast festivals, I mean, obviously, like you said, they kind of have the built-in audience for this topic, but bringing a film to those festival organizers, are you having to do any special negotiating to convince them to show the movie?
Uh, there's been different ways that it's
Yeah.
happened. Podcast movement, it's at the Gaylord Texan. They, said, yes, you can do it. They permitted, I was able to someone who donate the space, but then I had to get the projector and get that, they weren't going to pay for that because it's through the Gaylord Texan. They have one company you go through and they wanted $6,000. So I had to, in order to be there, I ended up having to raise through sponsorship like $6,000, which really hurts when you've made no money. But I thought it was important that we were there, and the money didn't come out of my pocket. We were able to raise it. And for some of these companies that sponsored it, it was like one email. Not for me. This guy, Justin Jackson, he actually built our website for the film, aoamovie.com. If you go there, he's the guy that put all that together, and also has been connecting me with some sponsors for the film. It's kind of our way to offset some of the costs. And he reached out. He was a fan of my first movie, and he had reached out when he saw the trailer for the movie and was like, "Hey, are you going to be a podcast movement?" And I was like, "Actually, we're trying to, but I gotta figure out how I'm gonna raise the money. He's like, "Oh, dude, I can help you with that. I'll send out an email to our group of companies. I know all the guys, and we should we should we should probably be able to figure that out." They were able to figure it out. We got the screening sponsored, so that was really cool. Like I said, I prefer that money be going other places. I can get a projector for, and a setup to have a company, an outside
Yeah.
company coming for like, dude, 2 grand. You know what I mean? So that was great because that led to other people wanting to screen it. Podfest, they were able to fit us in with their speakers, and they had screens already, and they were to slot us in a spot where they didn't have to. I'm sure for them, they didn't have to. They weren't. It wasn't an extra spend for them. For most podcast conferences, it's not a hard sell. They might want to. Their audiences theoretically would be the most interested in it. So, but also the hope is that we get on some podcasts as
Yeah.
well as we move forward. And if you're listening, we hope to do between now and then. We're hoping to do some more screenings. So if you're listening, if you're local to Dallas, Fort Worth, I'm hoping I can finagle some type of additional screening here, which I think would be fun to do. Maybe some of the crew that made the film that weren't able to be at the thing, and maybe do a panel thing where they can talk about how we made the movie. If anyone is interested in that, I don't know.
So when we're talking about you having to go out and reach out to these different festivals to just talk to them about having the film there, are you doing all of that yourself? Do you have other people you're working with, kind of like Justin Jackson's helping you find the sponsorships, or are you doing all of the promotion solo?
I would say I've had some people that have helped with some brainstorming and some light outreach, but yeah, the the beast of it is me. And it's sending out tons of emails, following up. It's also lots of rejection and or just not hearing anything. I think that's the game, though. I think it's the game, and when I mean, it hurts. Certain things we didn't get into or were part of, like, just really some of them, not all of them. They have different scales. There's certain ones where you're like, "We make total sense to be here. Why aren't we here?" You know what I
Right.
mean? And there's some where you're like, "Okay, it makes sense." It hurts, but there's ones that you're like, you should have. This was made for you.
Do you
This
get
is a
feedback
this
whenever
has
you
been
don't make it into a festival like that? I mean, are they telling you what it was?
very no, not really. No. Very rarely do you get actual constructive feedback from a rejection. I'd love it. I'd love for them to say, these are even if it's like, "Hey, we didn't think the quality of the film was to our
Right.
standard," or if it was, "We think you are ugly and stupid, and we don't want you around." Like, which is what I assume every time.
Anyone who thinks you're ugly has never seen you.
They're like, "You are annoying, and, I don't want you around." That's a that that's what that's the story I tell in my head. But also it's like, it's always like there's this thin line, right?
Yeah.
Between being persistent and being annoying. You know what I mean? You kind of just want to be a little bit annoying, but just enough where people find it endearing at your tenacity, and not like. But I had this job this cold calling job I had a long time ago for the software company. That was kind of a side thing, and they were like, I was like, "How do I do this?" I don't know. They're like, "It's called emailing, really." And he's like, "If you don't get a response, just assume they didn't see it. If they can say no, and if they say no, you back off. But if you get no response, just assume they didn't see it, because their email pile is, tons of stuff that's going through people's emails. And if someone says, 'Leave me alone,' or just politely says, 'No, you're not interested,' or 'No, thank you,' that kind of thing. In my book, I'm not a hard. Maybe some salespeople are like, 'No, you tell them why not. You follow up.' But as far as, like, I think that other thing is like, you just, and people get busy. So I think I know me personally, I try to think me personally, like, I know I'm guilty of not following up right away, or, letting things get way further out than I would like them to, and I wanted to do it, or I was like, it wasn't because I was like, "Fuck this guy." And so when someone does that mental labor, because let's be honest, it's mental labor to, like, manage, like, that kind of reminder situation, right? But if you're asking a favor of someone, the onus is on you anyway. I feel like, I would say this is probably true of anyone. It's like booking shows, or you just have to stay on it. And a lot of times, um, it can go your way. So I think the persistence is that's the key to I think doing almost anything is to not give up.
So I wanted to ask you earlier, we were talking about your first film, A Fat Wreck. Whenever you were building out your release strategy for Age of Audio, what lessons did you learn from releasing A Fat Wreck that you wanted to take with you on this release cycle?
God, I wish I could have. That experience is so unique.
Yeah.
This has been so much more challenging to get it out there. I was going through this is the 10-year anniversary of Fat Wreck um, this year, and I'm hoping to do some screenings um, later in 2026. I was going through some documents, and I had this A Fat Wreck screening request form, and it had 128 requests, and like a bunch of them were theaters, and a bunch of them were like independent theaters and like venues. It wasn't just like I'm a fan of the movie. I had that as a thing, but and the question is like, hey, can you get at least 30 to 50 people, you know? Um, and I did that one. I booked 70 screenings of a Fat Wreck around the world myself. I did 50-50 splits on the door like that, trusted that they would give me the money, and then, I mean, we raised like $17,000 that way. I'm just doing those, which actually went into help some of the distribution costs of the film. But I got a list from they call it the Holy Grail. Like, well, 128 people were requesting it. Alamo Drafthouse, they did a run. It played it multiple. They reached out to me. That movie just had it, and it still does. Like, it still has such a because of Fat Records. I mean, not necessarily because the film is so good, which I think the film is really good, but that fandom is very gung ho about it. Still, like it's so exciting to see it. And this film, I just don't have it. The structure's different. That I'm thinking about reusing the list of
Yeah.
all those requests for a Fat Wreck and say, hey, this is the second movie. This is my follow-up movie. We're also doing a Fat Wreck 10-year anniversary. Would you like to do a 10-year anniversary? I'm thinking about this and going to do it. But yeah, it just hasn't had the same energy behind it. The podcasting community hasn't necessarily portioned sections have, but that was like a Fat Wreck was just undeniable. It was like people were like, for like, when's that movie coming out? When's that movie coming out? Can I screen it? And now with a lot of these screenings, there's partnerships that you can do, but some of them you're putting down a little bit of money, I guess, to cover basic, like employee costs, and then there's like splits on the door. Some places are full on four walls. You're paying, to screen it, which is such a different experience from, like I said, when I had the Fat Wreck, where it was people were coming to me and saying, "I want to screen this. Can I?" And I was able to be like, "Yeah, let's just we'll do a split." And that's an easy yes because it's like we're both sharing the risk, and
Right.
that means they believe in the film. Austin Film Society, they believed in the film, and that's was some of our better screenings, and all those people paid to be there, for that specific film, which was that was kind of a very rewarding screening. We weren't part like going to festivals is fine and it's great, but you're part of a lot of other stuff that's going on. That Austin Film Society screening was specifically to see that, and people put up, their hard-earned money to actually watch it.
So let me ask you this. This is my last official question. As a filmmaker and as an artist, what makes a project successful for you personally?
I mean, finishing it. Did you finish it? Success. You
Yeah.
finished it. Great job. You started something and you finished it. I think with whatever you're doing, starting something is not easy, but there's energy behind starting something. There's a excitement, haven't hit the roadblocks yet necessarily. You haven't had the disappointments. You haven't had to pivot 12 times, you haven't had to like run into the mountains of rejection. But finishing it, that takes pushing through. I mean, I know you write articles, getting the first paragraph in, kind of know where you're going. It's just getting through it, then like doing the proofreading and really going over the iterate, and you have to get it. But if you stop, no success. If you finish it, success. And then as a writer, well, and a creative, do your best all you can on something. You put hopefully everything you can into it if you're serious about it. And then you put it out and you hope it'll resonate with people. And if it resonate, I mean, this film for me has been a success. Some of the creative people I got to work with are tremendous. And also I have gotten that feedback. I got a lot of great feedback after the the Austin screening, most people stayed for the Q&A, which was like 25 minutes. It was hosted by Jerry from KUTX, and it was like, a full thing. We recorded it. It'll be up on our YouTube, but I'll put that up because I thought it was a really great. But all those people were there, and people came up after me and were like, "Oh my gosh, it's so awesome." I've had multiple podcasters say, "I feel seen." This is a movie where I feel like I feel like you really captured what it is to make these and be a part of it. And I had people that were the old heads in the original podcast come up and say, I don't know how you did it. Take 20 years of all this stuff and all the different ways things happen and kind of put it into something that is digestible. And but you did it. You were able to capture what would capture it, and those things are successes. Financially, it's really hard to tell that this movie, although definitely considered a micro budget, super micro budget, is still in hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it has to really clear a pretty high bar to where people start making money. And
Right.
I'm not talking about a lot of money. I'm talking about any money. And I mean, there's still expenses as we go through to market the film, and you know, we were able to get some sponsors, and we have a little, we've been able to find little bits of money here and there, but it's yeah. So financially success, I would love it. Who knows? Maybe it'll catch on. It looks like we're going to be in airplanes. It looks like we're gonna be in a few different places. So that's a tremendous success. So I should say that I'm in a unique position where I don't want to make it seem like I'm not incredibly grateful for the position I'm in. I have a place where the film is going to be distributed. It's going to, you know, there. I've had sponsors. I've had people put up money. I've had people give me $6,000 to screen the movie. Those are all successes. I think that. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, it does for sure. Yeah. So I would say the big success is finishing it, and then the equally big success is finding a way to get it in front of people. So as we wrap up, it's time for plugs. So where can the people go to follow you and your work and learn more about the movie?
Yeah, so if you go to aoamovie.com, that's your main resource. That's going to be where you can sign up for our email list, which I highly recommend you do because I'm starting to do it pretty regularly. And what we do is if you sign up for the email list right now, we're going to send the first 10 minutes. If you request it, we'll send you the first 10 minutes of the movie. Also, I've been doing the thing where randomly I've been picking like 4 or 5 people to send them the movie in exchange for an honest review on IMDb and just do a review of the film. So if anyone wants to sign up for the email list, sometimes we'll do that to get, people who want to see the movie, and they don't have to praise the movie. If you go and look on our our letterboxed,
Yeah.
it there's a lot of praise for the movie, and but you see it's evenly distributed. There's not all tens. It's evenly. I mean, toward good, which I'm happy to report. Somebody put could have been a YouTube short. I think they still gave it like three
Man.
stars, but there could have been a YouTube short. That one was really funny, but also a lot of people praising the movie. So, AOA movie is all our socials. So it's Instagram. We have a pretty active TikTok. For the time being, I guess. I don't know what's happening with TikTok.
Yeah. Who knows?
Obvious, and then we have a Facebook that we just started so I could run ads. I didn't realize we had a Facebook group, but we didn't have not a for Age of Audio, but we didn't have an Age of Audio page. So I
Yeah.
had to create a Facebook page. So if you on Facebook, go there and follow it. But really, if you go to the AOA movie website, there's information about the film. Our sponsors are there and all that kind of fun stuff. And if you want to be a sponsor, anyone listening to this, a few more sponsorship opportunities for the movie comes out in April. You have a couple more months before we can add you to the film. Really, we also have this is a little bit of a spoiler as well. There's a host read ad in the middle of the movie, and that space is still available.
Okay.
That space is still available. Just
Okay,
saying.
well, I'm going to include a link to the website in the show notes. And if I haven't made it clear enough already, Shaun, you're not only on today because I love you and love talking to you, but I'm also a big fan of this film. I thought it was tremendous when I saw it the first time. I've seen it a couple of times now, and I think you did a really great job kind of putting this whole thing together and just bringing in all these important characters from the history of podcasting and also telling Ronald Young Jr.'s story, because I think that really gives it an emotional arc that really works. Congratulations on finishing it and getting it in front of people. And I cannot wait to see what happens next for you and the movie.
Thanks, Austin. It's actually an honor to be on your podcast. I've been hoping. I was like, "Hope you're going to bring me on the podcast." All
Oh, man. All right. Well, hey, take care and we'll talk again soon.
right, cheers.